Howdy, partners. How you folks doing? I was in a cowboy sort of mood today, and I've got my masks here so I can be safe. Um, Hope you're doing well. My God, look at those eyebrows. I wish I had eyebrows. And that chin. That's a chin that can drive a stampede of horses. Yeah. Anyway, hope you're doing well. Let's see, how are we doing here with the attendance? All right, well, it's starting. People are starting to decide they want to do things asynchronously. That's okay. You and I know, though, you folks that are here, it's much more fun to do this synchronously. So let's take a quick look at our chat before we go. Yeehaw, thank you, thank you. I still haven't decided what I'm going to be for Halloween. Looks like I'm going to be either pirate or cowboy, or, well, if you know Snapchat, you know very well that I can be almost anything I want, which you will see as the quarter goes on. Let's get out of this silliness. And see, that's no chin. All right, here we go. What we're going to do first is I have a little announcement about something that we realized would help us. So let me go ahead and post that. Let me change my all right. So host only. So from now on, you can only post to the host. You know, I don't know. Maybe there's some way we can set it up so you can talk with each other, but I don't have to see that chat. It just takes up so much room on the chat where if you have some very important questions you want to ask me, that's important that I get to see that. So let's see if we can do that. I don't know. Maybe there's another part of Zoom that allows you to do that. I don't know. Oh, someone just asked who I voted for. I'm not allowed to say. I'm just going to tell you, voting is so important. I know a lot of you, I know it's for my son, it's absolutely the case. Voting is important always. This might be the most important time you ever vote. Vote by mail. You can do it now. I think that will work absolutely fine. My son is in Wisconsin, and he felt so strongly about it. He actually, even though he's from Los Angeles, he actually registered in Wisconsin so he could vote there, where it is so very important. Please vote. This is the reason I put this up here today, is because I did vote earlier in the week, and I want to remind you that you can vote by mail now. This is a great time to vote by mail, given the concerns about mail. The earlier the better. Okay. All right. Let's just see very quickly. There's a couple more questions about voting. I'm really not allowed to say I have never gotten in trouble, but I've had colleagues that have gotten in trouble that have talked about their political beliefs. I'm not allowed to do that, but I do think that this could be the most important time you ever vote, even though it's your first time voting. So please do. Okay, let's go to our slides then, and you'll see I have a little announcement here. Yes. The announcement is that, in fact, my lab is looking for research assistants. Now, I'd like to talk a couple of seconds about... sorry about this, everybody. Yeah. About research assistants, actually. Man, things are getting a little squirrely here. Hold on, just take a second. Why is this not working? Okay, sorry everybody. Hopefully you can still hear me. I don't know what's going on here. Let me set this here and then we will, oh man. Okay, hold on everybody. Don't know, hold on just a second. I'm having trouble moving my screen. Let me do this. Remove pin, then go to this, and now, there we go. I should be able to pull this. What the heck? I am not able to make this big today. All right, for whatever reason, I can't make my image any bigger and I can't move it. And I have no idea why that is happening. but it's going to have to stay small there. You can, of course, resize it, but it's going to be small on the video too, and It actually might be a little cumbersome in the video. That's okay. Anyway, here's the important stuff. My lab is looking for research assistants. Now, you might have heard a little bit about being a research assistant in a laboratory. And typically it involves going to the laboratory, depending on if it's in psychology or biology or chemistry or whatever. It involves going to the laboratory and doing the work there. Obviously that can't happen right now, so what my lab is doing is we are actually running subjects online, and we are doing a remote connection from our own computers at home onto the computers in the lab, and making stimuli, setting up experiments, then running subjects. My laboratory, it studies audio-visual speech perception, so how the senses integrate for purposes of recognizing speech, how we use visual speech and auditory speech, which I will certainly talk more about later on, and also studies face perception and voice perception. And we're looking for some research assistants that can actually help us this quarter. And I believe it's not too late. You can, if you have an opened, some open hours, and maybe from being home you might actually have more open hours than usual. We can give up to 4 credits. You can take it for a letter grade, and it involves, in my lab, as I said, connecting to our laboratory computers from remotely, and that's very straightforward. We teach you how to do that. And then editing, basically you'd be editing visual stimuli, audio, video stimuli remotely, and then setting up times to run subjects remotely. Now, that's what I'm looking for, and if you're interested, please do contact my graduate student, Serena Zadorian, and you can see her email right there. She'll get back to you quickly, because we are in the need of somebody pretty quickly. A few people, probably. But let me just say something about it that goes beyond me. If you decide to become a psychology major or a major in any of the sciences, I really recommend that you use your time here at UCR to get involved in a laboratory. Say you become a biology major and you're interested in certain aspects of neuroscience or something like that. There are many neuroscience laboratories that would be looking for research assistants to help out. Now, how many hours you need to dedicate to a laboratory depends on the laboratory. For my laboratory, we're looking for about 5 hours a week. Other laboratories that involve, working with animals can sometimes require more than that. But you're a freshman, you don't typically have to worry about this right away, but it is not a bad idea to get involved in a laboratory as soon as you find one that's interesting. I know a lot of other psychology labs are looking for research assistants, and it is a tiny bit late this quarter. We just realized we needed a few more research assistants today. But it might not be too late to join a lab that studies the psychological effects of prejudice, or personality aspects of psychology, or perceptual aspects like I study. So it's just kind of a plug for research assistants in my specific lab, but also research assistants in other laboratories, whether it's in psychology, biology, chemistry. You've got, this is a University of California. This is a University of California campus. You are really, on campus with very active laboratories, Nobel Prize winners, people who do a lot of cutting-edge research that's published in major journals. And if you are into the sciences, you should take advantage of having that resource for you. Get involved in something like this. So that's, again, a plug. You're a freshman, I understand. You're first quarter freshman. You may want to wait on this. But for those of you that are interested in doing research right away with my laboratory, then there's an option. Okay? Any quick questions on this? Let me see if there are, and I kind of expected some. Okay. Could you put the Zoom link for the meeting in the syllabus so it's easier to find when it comes to a lot of announcements? Put a Zoom link for the meeting in the syllabus. Yeah, I could. So you're talking about the Zoom link for the video, Kari? I guess I could do that. So for my laboratory, the research research assistant requirements is we want somebody who's going to be there at least 5 hours a week, or help us at least 5 hours a week. And as I said, you're working from home, you're working from your bedroom this quarter. Hopefully, as time goes on, it'll become a more normal laboratory experience for you, but you'd be working from your bedroom, and you'd be doing video editing from your bedroom, and be running subjects from your bedroom, which involves partly a Zoom communication to subjects that are taking the intro psych classes. Okay. Oh, okay, so my image looks full screen. That's good. It looks good. It's very nice to hear. Where can I look to get involved? Vanessa asked, that's a great question, Vanessa. Depending on your interest in a major or a type of laboratory, go to that department page in psychology, for example. You can go to the psychology department, look at the faculty listing, look at usually there's a website that's linked to the faculty, and you can look at that website to get a sense of the type of research that faculty does. And then you can, just email them and say, I don't know if you're looking for research assistants right now, but I find your research really interesting. Please keep me in mind, or something like that. Good. Oh, you don't think I got the email right? It says this. Okay, take out the email thing. God, I don't understand this email stuff now. Just use, if that email's not working for you, just use serena.zadorian@ucr.edu. That should work, and if it doesn't, email me and I'll forward the email to her. Okay, a biology major, should I be a part of a biology lab? Yeah, I think it's a great idea if you're going to be a major. And your 4 credits count towards, your degree. It's not specific to any sort of class or something like that. You can get 4 credits pass-fail. Just for being a research assistant. And if you want to write a little paper, most laboratories will give you then a letter grade for your credits, which is great because they can give you a very good grade for your participation. God, there's a lot of questions. I don't have all this time to ask. Maybe just a couple more. There's a research lab page on the psych department site that links you right to RA applications. Okay, our wonderful TA, Sam, says, I think this email ID is correct, Larry. I verified it. It could be that maybe it's different when you're on campus than off campus. If serena.zadorian@ucr.edu doesn't work, try putting that email back in there as it says here. Okay, great, thank you. The lecture, someone has to leave early today, just so you know, the lecture will be uploaded as quickly as it processes, which is now, it's taking about 2 hours for lectures to be processed by Zoom and then by YouTube. Okay, let's go ahead and continue with our lecture. Now, I need to say something about this. I'm having such fun, and you folks have been so wonderfully engaging, okay, which I love. The more questions, the better. This is how we want to have fun. Thank you for all the great questions. However, I am, as a result, going a little slower than I usually go at this point in the course, which means I'm just going to speed up the lecturing a little bit, and it's certainly going to be comprehensible. I'm just not going to quite slow us down with as many examples. I want to make sure you guys get introduced to so many cool things about perception. So I'm going to go a little faster because I don't want to cut off your questions. Those are wonderful. But I want to make sure I can cover as much material as possible. So let's go ahead and remind ourselves of what we were talking about. And there's this really great stuff from Sandy Berman, our sound designer friend, who is interested in making sure, this is the important stuff about Sandy, making sure that the ambient reflected acoustics in the room that the video or film was taken in is replicated when he has to add sound in post-production. So whether he has to add sound effects, and that's the Foley arts we talked about, or looping, which is when the actors have to come back to the set and re-record their lines. He wants to make sure that those new recordings that are going to be added to the movie are going to sound like they were recorded in the same room. And then we talked about the different ways he can do that. Room tone recordings are just a way to kind of capture the reflected sound in the room by microphones, although he is not as crazy about that. Convolution, worldizing is actually taking the recording that you re-record in the sound studio and bringing it to the literal environment where the original sound was recorded, the original scene was recorded. Convolution is a way of adding the right type of acoustic structure from a room to the sound electronically. Let me say I promise not to do too many, kind of little asides, tangents, anecdotes, but here's one. I posted a video that some of you might be interested in on our YouTube page with all the lectures. That video shows the recording of a chorus that is being recorded in a normal studio, a large studio because it's a chorus. But what they have done is they've added the acoustic structure of a very famous mosque. This is the mosque that's in Istanbul. If you've been to Istanbul, if you've seen pictures of Istanbul, you know there's this main mosque that's closest to the downtown area. It's very conspicuous. It's very famous, sometimes called the Blue Mosque. And that mosque has these gorgeous acoustics in them, like a church or a temple. Mosques also have these beautiful kind of reverberant, echoey acoustics. And what they wanted to do is simulate what that chorus sounded like in that mosque. Well, you're not allowed to actually go to the mosque and sing. Okay, that's something that you are no longer allowed to do. At least not the sort of music that was that the choir wanted to record. So what they did is they actually got permission to go into the mosque, do something like a quick recording. I think what they used was a balloons popping or something like that, and then use the acoustic information from the echoes and put it on a computer that then could be applied to the choir. And so it's this really beautiful example of, I guess, what you would call convolution in this case, where you're taking the acoustics from one space, this beautiful old mosque with these great kind of echoes, reverberations, and bringing it to another space that the actual singers can hear as they're singing. There's a really neat technology that does that. I won't get into it, but I just thought if you're interested in this sort of thing, I know some of you are interested in music, you do some, garage band music at home, or you're interested in DJing and you're interested in sound and how you can get different effects. This is something you want to see. It is absolutely amazing. Okay, of course, Sandy Berman, I'm laughing because I promised myself not to do these things. Sandy Berman is most favorable with recreating the space in the studio, and what he does is try to recreate the dimensions and surfaces of the room that were actually part of the scene as it was being filmed. And so he brings in big boards that will act as sound reflectors, baffles, the blankets that we talked about when we were discussing Jay Patterson's work. And by doing that and having the actor actually read the lines, dub or loop the lines, okay, again, in that space is the most compelling and sound structure that is most consistent with the original recording. That's what he really, really likes to do. And so, again, the big picture here is this. All these guys, and it was, as I said, I talked to twice as many as I actually put in the book. Sandy, Jay, all the other folks that were, that I talked to that do these sort of recording for TV and movies believe strongly that even though we're not necessarily consciously aware of it, unconsciously we know what rooms sound like. Rooms have these sound signatures, acoustic signatures. And when we're watching something, what we hear better sound like the same room as the one we're seeing, okay? If there's any deviation from that, it can take you out of the scene, as they like to say, kind of disengage you from the movie. So you might think you're just being distracted, or maybe you find the plot less interesting. But they'll swear that when you have that experience as an audience, at least some of the time, it's because there's something wrong with the sound. I mean, it is a serious, serious business. Now, the idea that you can recognize rooms by sound seems kind of intuitive as I talk about this. And also I talked about the example of being able to hear the difference between your walk-in closet with all the soft material in it and your bathroom where things are very reflective. I mean, that's a very obvious difference. In fact, if I went in there and sang my bad Rosenblum opera voice in a closet and then my bad Rosenblum opera voice in the bathroom and made recordings there, even though my voice is pretty much coming out of my mouth the same, okay, you would be able to tell, here's Rosenblum in the bathroom, here's Rosenblum in the closet. You would probably be able to tell that. However, there had not been any experiments that actually tested that, so we went ahead and did it. And what we ask people to do is whether they can recognize a series of rooms just based on how those rooms structure sound. So can we recognize rooms based on how they structure emitted sound? And we did something interesting. I think actually you talked a little bit about this in discussion section. I suggested to the TAs that they talk about this. I think it's a very interesting sort of recording technique. There's lots of ways you can record sound, but one of the best ways to record sound to capture kind of spatial information of a sound is through a technique called binaural recordings. And that's what this is showing up here, binaural recordings. And I actually have the term, I'll put it up in just a second, it comes a little bit later. But basically what it involves is taking microphones and putting them in the ear canals of a person. And so we have some of these in the laboratory. When we're all out back on campus, you want to come to our lab and play with binaural microphones. It's really cool. You take these little microphones, you put them in the ear canals of a person, and then you record sound, you know, in a large room or out in the forest, or some of you might have experienced this in a barber shop, right? And what that does is it does more than record in stereo, right? So you listen to music through headphones. That's typically recorded in stereo, so it's two microphones, or you know, they record a guitar, and they kind of what they call this, pan it to the right side of your sound field or your left side. And so two microphones will do that. Okay? But what these do is not only record sound in the left-right direction, but they also record sound in the front-back direction. So you can hear the sounds coming from behind you or in front of you. And you can hear sounds also whether they're coming from above you or below you, because the microphones capture the way our ears structure sound. Our ears flaps, these little flaps here, aren't just good for earrings, they are good for structuring sound so we can perceive the three-dimensionality of sound in a room or outside or something like that. So that's the technique we used. We put these little microphones in a person's ears and then had them stand a certain distance away, I think it was 6 feet away from a loudspeaker that we put out in front of them. And we played sounds to them. We played, I think the sounds that you're going to hear in just a second are little bursts of noise. They sound like this, like that. But we also had a recorded sound of a person talking. We had the recorded sound of somebody hitting a cowbell. I mean, we had lots of different things. What was important, though, is the sounds were always the same coming out of this little loudspeaker. And then we brought them, the person with the microphone in their ears, and the little loudspeaker into 4 different rooms. And there they are right there. This is a bathroom in the basement of, in fact, where my laboratory is. This is right down the hall from my laboratory, my basement laboratory. It's the men's room. This is a classroom that's in that same building. You probably don't know that, a lot of you don't know the classrooms on campus yet, but this is a classroom in a building called Olmsted, and I bet you have a class in that room at one point or another. This is a small laboratory room that is actually very close to ours. It's kind of the size of a large closet, I guess I would say, but it's small. You know, it's small. It was the smallest room we could use and still get our speaker in person in there together and be 6 feet apart from each other. And finally, this is a room on campus you may never see, but it's still there. This is the old gymnasium. So maybe when you toured campus, you saw the new gymnasium with the new basketball courts and all that sort of stuff. It's beautiful. This is the gymnasium when I started working on campus 30 years ago. It was the only one. And it's still there. I don't know if maybe it's a practice basketball court or something like that. Practice, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's also for practice volleyball, but they do use it. But it's this giant opened, you know, basically a big warehouse type of room. And so we recorded these sounds with the person using these ear microphones in each of these 4 rooms. And we used, as I said, multiple emitted sounds. We used these white noises. We used these voices, recorded voices. We used recorded cowbells. I can't remember what else. I think I have it on another slide. And we used, finally, there's the term, binaural recordings. Okay? And then what we did is we took these recordings and made sure that they sounded good. We took them back to the lab, cut them up, made sure they sounded good, and then played them back to subjects who sat in front of a computer and saw images of these 4 rooms. Okay? And we played them a sound and asked them which room was this sound recorded in. Now, here's the deal. When I do this in a class, when I do this in a lecture hall, the students get the sounds through loudspeakers that are in front of the room. It doesn't work that well. However, if you have headphones on, if you have them nearby, put them in right now. If they're handy, don't worry, it's not a big deal. Because I think you're going to really, really hear the differences between these rooms. And I think you'll have some kind of introspective experience as to what these different rooms sound like. So I'm going to play these 4 different rooms for you. Okay, and I want you to think about, I'll play them all at first, they're all for different rooms, and I want you to think about which room you think that was recorded in. Here's the first room, and I'm not going to tell you whether it was recorded in the bathroom, the classroom, the gymnasium, or the small laboratory room. There's a little sound burst, like that. Oops, sorry. Oh, crap. Are you hearing that? I am not hearing that. Let me quickly check what's going on with Zoom. No one panic. Everything's going to be fine. Okay, audio. Boy, that should work, that sound. I'm not sure why it's not. I'm sorry about this. I'm so excited because I thought this demonstration was actually going to work better. Okay, let's try this one more time. Sorry about this, everybody. Just take a second. Hello again. I'm going to share the screen and we'll try it. Hopefully it will work. Okay, let's try this first sound. It's not working. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to unplug my... Can you guys hear that? Maybe you can hear it even though I can't. Can you hear this? Just give me a quick yes or no. No. Okay, I'm going to unplug my microphone, and when I do that, I'm not going to come in very good. So I'm going to unplug my microphone, but I think this will allow you to hear this. Hopefully you can still hear my voice. Was that 1, 2, 3, or 4? I'll play it one more time. Here's another one. Again. And the next one, is this 1, 2, 3, or 4? Again. And then the last one, is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? Okay. Okay. Oh, good. So people heard it. All right, hold on. I can't hear you. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? You can hear me now. Good. Okay. I apologize for this. When I plug things back in, I mess things up. Not exactly what I wanted to do. Anyway, were you able to hear the sounds that I played for you? Yes or no? Yes, good. And so the correct, I'm going to put, that's good. That's all I wanted. If you were wearing earbuds, I bet you did pretty well. So let's go back and share the screen. and I will give you the answer to this. Okay. Thank you so much for your feedback. That really helps. The answer is, going from top to bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first one you heard was the bathroom. The second one you heard was the classroom. The third one you heard was the gymnasium. And the fourth one you heard was, in fact, the small laboratory room. Let me just try it one more time. I don't think this is going to work, but yeah, okay. It's not playing now because it would be nice to go back and listen to them again. People do really well. If you couldn't do well, don't worry about it. You know, people that were in this experiment wore those really nice headphones that went over their ears, so it really allowed them to hear all the detail. And let me show you how well they actually did. Okay, what you're seeing here, this is the bar you should look at right now. The bars you should look at are right here. You just heard the burst noise. Okay, and this is the percent correct for the bathroom, classroom, gymnasium, and then the small laboratory. And at the very least, they get about 75% correct with the classroom. But with the gymnasium, when you wear headphones, it is so clear you are in a very, very large room. It is so very clear. Let me just make sure I'm still being heard. Yeah, yes. Oh, the audio is now delayed? The audio is delayed by a second, just for your information. Is anybody else experiencing the audio as delayed? No, it's good. Okay. Okay, no problem. Thank you. You're so wonderful with your feedback. I appreciate that. Okay. People are ridiculously good at this. They're excellent at identifying rooms. And don't forget, the sound source is always the same. It's a little bursts of noise coming out of the loudspeaker. What distinguishes the rooms are how those rooms structure the sound after the sounds leave the loudspeaker. They go everywhere that they can. Of course, for the gymnasium, they've got such an expanse. For the classroom, they have a nice size expanse too. But like for the laboratory room, it sounds closer, I think, to most people. And with regard to the bathroom, it does sound closer still. It does sound close, that sound. However, you can kind of hear that the surfaces of the room are hard. And that's what we're dealing with there in the bathroom. There's no, by the way, I should mention there's carpeting in the laboratory room, and those walls are kind of your normal dry wall, so they absorb sound. But all the surfaces in the bathroom are tile or metal, or there are mirrors on the wall. They are very hard surfaces. Anyway, it turns out that you don't even need to hear very much of these sounds at all. I can play you you heard those bursts. I guess it was 5 bursts or 4 bursts or something like that of sound. I could play you just one of those and actually cut off most of it, so you just heard about a half second of one burst. The half second, that's the part that's just the echoes. And you do really well. In other words, not only are you really good at recognizing rooms by sound, if it's a kind of a choice like this, but you don't need very much sound at all to do this, which is really pretty amazing. Okay, it really is pretty amazing. Okay, let me take a quick break here, and we'll do a polling question. I'll see if there's questions from you folks. All right. Audio's okay. I had headphones in. I think it was just bad hearing. Okay. Sounds like everything's working technically now. I'm sorry about that. I don't think I have other audio demonstrations today, so I'll make sure next time it's working. I do know that Zoom is quirky with audio, and when I unplug my microphone, it takes a while for it to figure that out or whatever. It's a Zoom type of thing. But it sounds like things are good. Okay. Are there any questions on any of the things we've gone through in the last few slides? All right. No? Okay, let's do a polling question just to break things up a little bit. And this is a polling question that's going to tap into the slide that we started the class with, that we did as a review. So here is the question. Okay. Which of the following techniques
are techniques to make looped or redubbed dialogue sound as if they've been recorded as the same room as the original scene. Let me read that again. And of course, you're going to be able to read this in a second, but I want to make sure we get the audio on the video that we're capturing. Which of the following are techniques to make looped or redubbed dialogue sound as if it's been recorded in the same room as the original scene? 1, room tone recordings. 2, worldizing. 3, physically recreating the original room's acoustic space. Or 4, try not to say D, 4, all of the above. Let's go ahead and launch that. Give me your best answer. No one's keeping score here. I have no idea who's answering what. Just do your best guesses. And given that we just talked about this, I think you're going to do great. Okay, that's about 30 seconds. Looks like about, we can give you some more time. If you want, go ahead, just scroll back to the, if you have the slides there in front of you, look 2 slides back and it's the one that has Sandy Berman on it and your answer is right there. But again, it's fine to guess. I'm not taking any, I'm not scoring anybody or anything like that. Okay, that's about a minute. Looks like about 90% have answered. So let's go ahead and look to see how we did. Okay, I'm going to share the results. Most of you, 73%, chose all of the above, and that is the correct answer. The correct answer is all of the above. Okay, so the room tone recordings, absolutely. That's the one where you just bring the kind of set of microphones into the room and ask everybody to be quiet after they've done their scene, and then take that back into the studio and add that to the new recordings you're doing. Worldizing is this kind of elaborate thing where you record just the actor in the studio, but then you take that recording of their voice and bring it back to the original place. And that, when it comes to worldizing, I think that what I always think about is Jennifer Lopez coming into the studio and Sandy just recording her saying the lines again, and then taking the recordings back to Mexico City, and playing that recording over this beautiful ceramic-based patio that the scene was originally filmed in. That's what he meant by worldizing. But again, his favorite way of doing this is physically recreating the original room's acoustic space. But all 3 are things that he uses and things that most sound designers will use. So it is all of the above the correct answer. Great. All right. Let's take a quick second to see if there are any more questions. Oh, somebody is asking, are these, Kennedy wants to know, are these poll questions some of the questions that will be on the exam? Yes, Kennedy, I've said this a number of times, so maybe you forgot from other classes. These are literally the questions, some of the questions that are going to be on your exam. They are verbatim some of the questions that are going to be on your exam. How do they, okay, Kennedy asked another part. How do they redub actors' voices if they are filmed outside? That's a very, very good question. Typically, if there's a lot of noise outside, what they will do, that's one of the things that the room tone recordings are really useful for. So they will do room tone, even though it's not literally in a room, it's an outside tone recording. And so if there's birds and cars and all that sort of stuff, what they will do is add that to the voice that's recorded in the studio. That's, in that context, it sometimes is very important to do that. In other contexts, they might do the worldizing that I saw. Maybe they'll take they'll go back to the scene, they'll go back to the literal space where the film was actually done, that scene was actually filmed, and play the talker's voice outside where it was originally filmed. Great question. What is an easy way to remember worldizing is the same as convolution? No, worldizing, think about what a worldly person Jennifer Lopez is, that she did this, fancy pants movie, and during her wedding scene to Mark Anthony, I guess, they do it in Mexico, and that's, bringing it out, the recording out to the world, where convolution is a way of just doing it on computer. just adding kind of the acoustic structure based on, I think they do measurements or acoustic measurements based on that balloon popping I talked about before. So it's all kind of synthetic. It's synthetically done for convolution. If humans are so sensitive to sound, asked Kennedy, wouldn't we be able to tell sound effects are embedded after as well? Well, that's a great question, and that's why they've had to get so good at this. If you listen to old movies, you'll find that you can clearly tell when sound effects are used. The way I typically do this in the lecture hall is what I do is I play an old movie for you, but it's a very well done old movie called Mary Poppins. It's not the one with what's her name? It's not the newer one. It's the one with Julie Andrews, the very old one from the 1960s. And what I do is I first play the dialogue that is occurring between Mary Poppins and the father of the family in a sitting room. And it's a dialogue that was actually literally recorded there. And it sounds right. And then what I do is I switch the soundtrack, I think you can do this on Netflix and Amazon, but I have a DVD of this for my kids when they were young. I switched the soundtrack from the English, the regular English soundtrack to the Spanish soundtrack or the French soundtrack. And there it's dubbed, okay, so it looks a tiny bit funny, but what you notice is that in fact, Julie Andrews' voice, or whoever did the voice for that, sounds like it's in a different room. It's a very clear example where the acoustics that you're hearing them speak in don't match the acoustics you're seeing. So in old movies, at least, when they dubbed the new dialogue, they didn't care whether it sounded the same. They didn't add sound to the looping for foreign language dub films. Okay, now they do, but in the old times they did not, and that's why it doesn't sound good. It's a great example. I tried to do it last time, and guess what? Zoom does not allow you to show copyrighted material. Okay, so it didn't work. It just didn't. It wouldn't let me play it. And some thing came on saying you're going to be arrested or whatever. Laugh tracks from old movies too. Absolutely, Alex. That's a great example. Okay, terrific. Let's move on since we're trying to speed up a little bit. And I'd like to introduce. Oh, actually, you've already met him. This is Jay Patterson again. Okay, going back to this. We're going to talk about Jay Patterson again. There he is. And Jay said something very interesting to me. He said that not only are we sensitive to how rooms should sound, what a room's acoustic signature is, we are also sensitive to where in a room the sounds are. Okay, we're sensitive to the sound of how different parts of a room sound different. So if you look around your room right now, the one you're currently sitting in, you might see that in one corner, there's kind of a lot of clutter, okay? Like the room I'm literally in right now, not the outside that you're seeing. There's a lot of clutter in one part. And then if I go this way, I see there's much less clutter and there's kind of a big bare wall behind me, okay? And my voice will sound different whether I'm in the cluttered corner of the room just speaking or whether I'm in the uncluttered kind of large surface part of the room, okay? And they are aware of this. They are very, very aware of this. In fact, it causes a problem for them. And they have to correct it when they're filming in the same way they correct the acoustics. So what you're hearing matches what you're seeing. The acoustics of the room you're hearing match the acoustics of the room you're seeing. It is a problem well known by recording engineers, these sound mixers like Jay, called ambient shift. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it means that the ambient sound, the ambient acoustics in one part of a room are going to be different than the ambient acoustics in another part of the room. Remember, we talked about ambient sound being the reflected sound. And sound just very simply reflects differently in one part of the room than another part of the room. Okay, why is that a problem for them? Well, they use a type of microphone, and they still do, okay, that actually picks up both people in a dialogue from the same position. It's a very, very well-known and still often used microphone called a shotgun microphone. Okay. That is a shotgun microphone you're seeing right there. And that is a scene, it's a photo from a scene of a show that Jay worked on called Without a Trace. That was very popular in 2000, 2008, 2009, 2010. Won tons of awards. He won an Emmy for his sound on that show. Not sure you recognize these actors. They're still around. They're still active. But what I'm trying to portray here is that that microphone is used to pick up the dialogue of both actors. Now, it is true that actors have these little lapel mics on them too, but they still like these microphones because the quality is very good. And they're called shotgun microphones. Well, you know, obviously they look kind of like a shotgun, but they can be directed at each of the actors. And so these are the microphones, if you've ever seen, you know, a film company filming somewhere, and you see somebody holding a big boom, a big kind of post that has a microphone on the end, okay? That is the shotgun microphone. It swings back and forth when one person's talking and another person's talking. Do I have that here? Do I have it's swinging back and forth? No, that's okay. Imagine though, this microphone is gonna, you know, she's talking here. I can't remember her name. I can't remember either of their names. Okay. She's talking, she has dialogue. You can't handle the truth. He says, I want the truth. And the mic swings over to him. Okay. And as they're talking, this mic here swings back and forth. There's a little kind of pulley system on it, so it swings back and forth. In fact, the person who controls it has the script there and swings the mic back and forth as they're reading the script because they know who's going to be speaking when. Okay, so it's quite an art. If you watch them work, it's really very impressive how quickly and accurately they can swing this microphone back and forth. The problem with doing that is this: the space behind this actress, this character right here, in this office is going to have a different acoustic signature than the space behind this person. So yes, the overall room has its acoustic signature, but the areas of the room also have their acoustic signature. In my room, if the mic were swinging back and forth, when it was pointing in this direction, it would be capturing the cluttered part of the room. As it swung in this direction, it would capture the less cluttered part of the room. And because of that, it's going to record two different acoustic spaces across the dialogue. That turns out to be a problem. Okay, so the point is, he told me, is that every room is differently reflective in different areas. Part of a room is more cluttered in one area and less cluttered in other area. Maybe in this office space, there's nothing behind her but a big glass wall, and behind him are many many desks with people sitting at them, and maybe they're not even making noise, maybe they're just sitting. But those are all things that are going to reflect sound and make the sound behind him a little different than the sound behind her. So when this mic goes back and forth, it has the potential problem of recording a space that sounds different when it's pointing this way than when it's pointing this way. Okay. And that's because the shotgun microphone, just to make it very clear, and maybe it's been intuitive, records in a very narrow distance. It's unlike the microphones that are actually here that record everything around. A shotgun microphone just records the thing it's aiming at, the person speaking, and the area behind them. It's not recording. If I'm my shotgun, okay, I got a shotgun microphone right here. There we go. Let's pretend this is a shotgun microphone. It's just recording what it's aiming at and the space behind it. Okay? It's not recording from anywhere over here or anywhere over here. Yes, it turns around and now it can capture that. But if it's going back and forth like this during the dialogue, it could potentially sound like to the listener that they're switching between two rooms. And that's a very, very difficult thing for them to deal with. They have to deal with it. So this mic shifting back and forth can cause the actors to sound like they're in separate rooms. And anybody who does this sound mixing is very, very aware of this problem. So besides coming in and making sure that the room sounds like it looks, that the room has the ambient sound like you would expect it to based on what you're seeing, you also have to make sure that the ambient sound is reflected on the two sides of the room. So they do the same thing. He has to come in with his blankets, he has to come in with his baffles, and he has to make sure that the room sounds the same here as it does there, even if there's more clutter here than there. So, okay, we said behind this actress, we've got a lot of open space and a big glass wall, and behind him we have a lot of clutter. What we'll have to do is make this space behind her sound like it's more clutter-filled, okay, by putting blankets there or something like that. And that has to be done for every scene, for every movie and TV show. So they're not just kind of changing the acoustics of the room so it matches what you're seeing. They're changing the acoustics of the room so it sounds the same in different positions. And that's all a function of these wonderful shotgun microphones that they still use to this day, and that only capture the sound that it's directed towards. Okay, so the point is, if you go back now and look at what we have written up there, we are sensitive to the sound of different room positions. It seems like that based on what Jay Patterson is teaching us. Okay, so we heard that, we thought that's a really interesting thing that I don't think psychologists have ever really thought about. And so we did a quick experiment, and this is one of the I wouldn't say sadistic, but I guess, well, we'll call it fun experiment for subjects that we've ever run. Okay, what we wanted to see is if subjects could determine where they were in a room based on how that part of the room reflected sound. Okay, so we wanted to make sure that it's room reflections, not a sound source. So actually what we did, you know that classroom you saw a couple of slides ago when we were talking about recognizing rooms based on how they structure sound. I showed you that classroom. Imagine that classroom now with no chairs in it whatsoever. We took everything out of that room and we turned off the ventilation so there was no ventilation sound. And then what we did is we took subjects in and positioned them in either the corners or the sides or the center of the room, and either had them make sound or played a sound behind them. And that's exactly what this is showing here. We decided that kind of the easiest way to do this is to put them on a cart so we can move them around to these different positions. And as you can see here, still is not working. Okay, no problem. We are showing you here, this is the front left of the room, the middle left, the back left, the center. We're just kind of labeling these things so you know what they are. And so basically we shifted them around in this classroom and then stopped and asked them where they thought they were. Okay, it's fun because they get a free ride on this little cart. They have to wear headphones as we move them from position to position so they can't kind of hear themselves moving to the different positions. So they put headphones on, we play them loud music. And in order for them to really be disoriented, because we want them to do this based only on sound, we spin them around as we're doing it. You had to see this. It was hysterical. The subjects were all great sports. We told them everything we were going to do. They're wearing headphones pretty much wearing blindfolds the entire time, wearing headphones much of the time, and getting spun on a cart. And then we stop them at a position, one of these 9 positions you're seeing in the room, and we play a sound then, where we ask them to make a sound and ask where they think they are. Okay, so a little more of this. Okay, so the sound source is moving with the listener, and we do, as I said, either ask them to make some sounds like testing 1 2 hello hello. We had a little those little plastic clickers that you can use to train dogs, and then we had sounds coming out of the loudspeaker that you see put that's positioned behind them. Again, it's important that the sound always move around with them. We don't want them doing this based on knowing where a sound is coming from. We want it based on how that position in the room is structuring the reflected sound. And they were good. They were able to tell this. Jay Patterson's intuitions were really right on. I mean, they're not great with all the sounds, but if you look at this, what this is showing is, especially with the voice, when they say, when they're doing their echolocating and going testing 1 2 testing 1 2, they're pretty accurate. Now, don't forget, chance would be what, 10% or 9%? No, I guess it's 11% or something like this, 11% accuracy. And here they are 60, 50, 60% accurate, which is much, much better than chance. So they're not perfect, certainly, but they can recognize where they are, whether they're in a corner of a room, whether they're in the middle of the room, whether they're on a side wall or a back wall, just by how that part of the room reflects sound. And think about this. When you walk to the corner of a room and go testing, 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 it's going to sound different than when you're in the middle of the room going testing, 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 right? It's going to sound very different. It does sound different, and it sounds different enough that you can hear where you are in a room at better than chance levels, which is pretty impressive. Okay, let's take a little break, get some questions, and then I think we'll do one more polling question, and then we'll finish up the class. Okay, what do we got here? Okay. Can you define ambient shift again? Absolutely. This is, by the way, a term that is used by the recording, the TV and movie recording industry. What they're saying is, because they use these microphones that are recording only in a very limited space, that they are recording not just the actor, but what's behind the actor, the acoustics and the reflections that are behind the actor. Almost in every room you ever encounter, okay, the space behind one position is going to have different acoustics than the space behind another position. Imagine you doing this now in your room. Okay, what type of acoustics would this record if it were pointing this way in your room? Okay, maybe it's getting your bed, and maybe it's getting the carpeting. And now you point it this way, and maybe it's getting a window, and maybe it's getting other hard surfaces. I'm just trying to make this as intuitive as possible. The acoustics in that part of the room are different from the acoustics in that part of the room. So if you have a microphone that's only picking up part of the acoustics at a time, you've got a problem. And that's what ambient shift is. The shift in the microphone going back and forth captures a different type of ambient sound in a room. Okay, that's what the ambient shift is. I think that's Sally Fields. It might be, I think Mastriano, I think is her last name. Sally Fields wasn't in that show, but it does look like Sally Fields. I agree with that. I'm surprised you know who she is. Okay, what else do we got? I use a shotgun microphone all the time for videos and films. So they still use it. Yeah, I asked Jay, I said, if you've got this serious problem and you're using other mics anyway, why are you still using a shotgun microphone? If you got rid of the shotgun microphones, you would be able to solve this problem without having to put extra blankets in one part of the room and all this stuff. He said, the shotgun microphone, there's something about it that makes the dialogue seem more alive, that makes it sound like the person is talking towards you or towards where they're supposed to be speaking. And for whatever reason, they're high quality microphones. They're very, very precisely directed towards a person. They work really, really well. And I guess clearly other people use them too. That's great to know. You use shotgun microphones for recording marching band, Alex? You use shotgun microphones? That is really interesting. So I assume that's what you mean, or for amplifying marching band, you use shotgun microphones. That's really interesting, Alex. Thanks so much. So that's exactly what it looks like, right? That usually it's got some sort of tip to it, and these are, some of the most expensive microphones in the world are these shotgun microphones, and they're considered, kind of the cream of the crop. So great. Good. Thank you for all those questions. I'm glad to know that other people know a little bit about this. That's terrific. Let's do one more polling question for the day. And this one will have to do exactly with what we just talked about. And that is ambient shift. So this should be a very easy thing for you. So the question is this: ambient sound shift is 1, a byproduct of recording actors with a shotgun microphone. 2, can make 2 characters in a scene sound like they're in 2 separate rooms. 3, shows that the brain is sensitive to the position in a room from which one is listening. So the brain knows where in a room you're listening from. Or 4, all of the above. Okay? We just talked about this. You just had a slide. Move back to the previous slide if you want. But there you go. Okay, another 30 seconds or so, and we should have it. All right. Most people are getting this right, but no problem if you didn't. We'll go through it. It has no bearing on your grade, but you'll have the answer, so you can do well on this question on the test. All right. I think that's probably enough. Don't worry if you didn't answer it. Again, it has not recording these. It says it's anonymously done. No problem. So let's finish and go ahead and share the results. And most people, 74%, chose all of the above, and that is in fact the correct answer. Okay, it's not. I'm doing a lot of all of the above. That's just the way kind of the sample question worked out. But it's nice because it allows us to do a nice review. As we said, it is a byproduct of having a shotgun microphone. Wait, is that? It's a byproduct of with recording actors. I think it's missing a little text here on my page. On my screen, it's missing text. Hopefully, it is there on your screen, but it should say with a shotgun microphone. It can make two characters in a scene sound like they're in separate rooms, and that is, again, because of the way the shotgun mic records, and one part of a room is going to, in fact, have different acoustic characteristics from another part of the room. Okay, shows that the brain is sensitive to the position in a room from which one is listening, right? Because if this wouldn't be a problem if the brain didn't know that one part of the room did sound like the other part. So the correct answer is all of the above. Okay, I assume that you're getting this sentence in full. Ambient sound shift is a byproduct of recording actors with a shotgun microphone. I'm not seeing that on my screen, but that's okay. All right, there you go. Looks like there's one more question here, one more chat question. What is the microphone called that has four ends? So that picture I showed you of the room tone recording microphone, it might have a special name. I don't know it offhand, but typically when room tone is being recorded, there are microphones facing many, many directions to make sure that you're getting as much of the room's acoustics as possible. And yeah, I mean, it is the case that you're going to be able to then get the sound of the room that has certain clutter in this position and other clutter in this position, and depending on how many mics you actually use, you'll be able to get that in there. Okay, so I don't know the real name of it, Vanessa, but it is useful for recording the acoustics of different positions in the room. Okay, binaural recording, Ali, is just the idea of recording sounds from microphones that are put in the ear. Okay, and that's going to allow. I told the TAs that it would be a fun thing to do. I didn't require them to talk about it. But if you didn't go to section this last week, do watch the videos, because I think most of them did talk about it at least a little bit. You'll get more of a sense for what that is, and then go ahead and look at the video that we're making right now, and I do a description of it there too. Okay, great. Then let's move on, and we're now working towards finishing reflected sound, and we're going to be moving towards perception of sound sources, which you did a little bit of in the discussion section, but we're going to be doing much more of here, including music perception. I wanted to talk about this third lesson that's going to come from Sandy Berman. It is a lesson suggesting that we are sensitive to when and how sounds are obstructed. So let's talk about Foley arts now. Let's talk about sound effects. And what you're seeing, what you're seeing here, there's Sandy again, is a Foley studio. And this is also, this is not Sandy's, this is somebody else's, but this is also typically the studio where they'll do the looping as well. But right now it's set up to do the Foley. It's set up to do the sound effects. And so what you're seeing, if you want to kind of bend into the screen to see, is that we've got two sound designers who are actually walking on, I think it's leaves. It's usually leaves or something like cereal sometimes. And what that does is when it's recorded, it provides a sound that sounds like people walking through a park on leaves. So these guys here are watching the screen, which is, part of the actual video or the movie or the TV show. And this scene in the TV show shows people walking across a park. And what they will do is, so typically when they'll do this, they'll try to record the sounds as accurately as possible, but it's very hard to record footsteps that are compelling out outside. So they'll recreate them in the studio. This is what the Foley artists do. They will, in fact, step on this, set of leaves here in synchrony with what they're seeing on the screen. So that's why they have two people here. This person may be watching this person here and trying to synchronize his footsteps with his footsteps. And this guy is going to synchronize his footsteps with this character's footsteps. And by doing this and walking on something that can then be recorded well, they can get a very clear sound of people walking, say, on leaves through a park. Okay, so that's a classic example of Foley. In fact, footsteps are typically done like this. These days there's lots of different ways to do Foley where you can have car crash recordings on a computer, and when the car crash is being portrayed, you can push a button and match the computer sound car crash to the one that you're seeing. But when it comes to footsteps, they typically do it live. They say, man, that is a sound the brain really knows and cannot be fooled with. So they will typically do footsteps like this old school way you're seeing right here, not with computers, but by really walking on something in the studio that synchronizes with what's being seen. Now, here's the important thing. What they will do, if in fact the characters are seen going behind something, like say they at one point walk behind a very large tree trunk or something like that, is they will have to put something then between the microphone that's recording their footsteps and the footsteps themselves. Okay, think about it. When somebody is walking on leaves and then you see them go behind a tree trunk from your position, okay, what happens to the sound? It becomes a little less distinct. It becomes a little more damped like that, a little more dampened, right? They have to recreate that in the studio somehow. They can't just keep walking on those leaves. They have to put something there when the actors are seen going behind the tree. So it sounds like the sound is from behind the tree as well. And that's what's meant. That's what Sandy meant by Foley recording is done in a cluttered environment where the clutter is designed to match the clutter of what's being seen. So here we go. And as I said, you'll say footsteps have to be recorded with real footsteps in the studio. We can't use computer recordings of footsteps. They have to be done like this. So, say now you have a scene where two guys are walking down the street and, they're walking down the sidewalk. Here's a bunch of people walking down the sidewalk. But imagine these two guys now are talking. They're walking down the sidewalk, and at one point, and the camera is from the position looking at both of them, looking at the sidewalk as if the camera's in the middle of the street facing them directly and kind of following them. It's on a track. Camera's tracking them as they're walking. At one point, they could go behind something like a large barrier or a large obstacle, like maybe, this is a large cement, base for, a light pole or something like that, okay? And when their footsteps go behind that light pole, okay, they're going to sound different from the position from the position where the filming is taking place. So here my two people are walking here, and then all of a sudden they go behind this barrier, okay, and it's going to sound a little different when they're behind the barrier. And so now when they have to re-record that in the Foley studio, they have to, record them walking on something that's going to sound like, I guess, what is that, concrete or whatever. But then when they go behind that barrier, they have to put a barrier in the studio, use a barrier in the studio. So for that very brief moment when the footsteps are behind the visible barrier, it sounds like footsteps are behind a barrier. That's how sensitive our ears are to obstructed sounds. So the microphones are in fact placed behind where the barrier is going to be, because there's going to be that point at which the barrier has to make the sounds seem like they're behind something. Okay, so that's exactly what happens. And I said, okay, so this makes a little sense. I could imagine. So maybe the most intuitive example is like you close a door, like you hear two people talking loudly, maybe they're arguing, and you close the door because you want privacy. And now you can still hear them, but it's quieter. You can't hear them. Their voices aren't as distinct, right? And that's something that's a barrier that's now changing the sound. Okay, what I asked him though is how important is the size of the barrier and the shape of the barrier? And he said, oh my gosh, it is really important that the shape and size really makes a difference. You can't use something big and tall like a door if you're trying to simulate the barrier sound of something short and wide like this concrete base here. It does not sound right. I mean, this is just amazing that they kind of attend to this type of detail. And he says, trust me, yeah, I'm not just doing this for my friends. I'm not just trying to, get my friends to vote for my Emmy Award. This is something the audience's brain notices. Even if they're not conscious of it, the brain of the audience will know there's something wrong with the sound of those footsteps if the barrier isn't roughly the same size as the one they're seeing. Just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. So we decided to test this one too. This is actually something we tested beforehand. And this, by the way, I'm not going to be talking about my research the rest of the quarter. It just happens to be just some of the things that we've done in our lab. So it doesn't sound like it's the Rosenblum show. Okay. This we call one of our hearing silence shapes experiments. And what we wanted to see is not if people could hear the shape of something that was making sound, and you learned a little bit about that in the discussion section, but the shape of something that is blocking sound. So we're interested in what we call, sound occluding surfaces. And we asked a very, very simple question. We asked people if they could hear barriers that were in front of a sound well enough that they could determine whether they could walk through the barriers. Okay, that was the first one. So that's what you're actually seeing right here. There's a subject. There's a subject. Here are some barriers that can be moved. They are actually soundproofing, wall soundproofing, if you know anything about that. It's a light foam material, but they're big, and they can be put on wheels. And so what we did is we moved these so they could either completely shut off the sound, or completely block the sound at least, or move apart from each other so that potentially somebody could fit through the space made between these walls. Okay, so these are positioned in front of loudspeaker. We also, by the way, did another version of this where we asked people if the sound occluding wall was moved up and down, and asked people whether they could fit under it without ducking. Okay, but let's talk about the one where you're asked to judge whether the sound occluding, the sound obstructing walls are in a position that allows you to walk through it. So everyone comes in blindfold to this experiment. Okay, they're blindfolded and they hear sounds. I think the sounds we were using with these loudspeakers were, what they were? They were sounds of a cafeteria, the cafeteria that's on campus, the Commons cafeteria, the one that's on the basement floor there with the pizza place, which you'll get to know once campus reopens. And we recorded just, kind of these background sounds. And then we played them through a set of speakers. I think we had 8 loudspeakers there positioned. And so you came into the room blindfolded, you say, oh yeah, I hear something that sounds like a cafeteria sound or something like that. So that's exactly what it is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move the subjects blindfolded to a position where they're right in front of those loudspeakers, and then move boards closer or further apart and simply ask people, we're going to create a space between these 2 sound obstructing boards. Is the space big enough for you to walk through without having to turn? So they're doing this completely based on sound, and it's really based on how sounds are obstructed. And they're amazing at this. In fact, they were as good at judging whether they could walk through this space or under this board that also moved up and down in another experiment, okay, as they would be if they were not blindfolded, and just looking at these boards. So we turn off the sound. We have the boards come close. I can't walk through that. We have them pull apart. Yep, I can walk through that. We have them like here. It's like, I think I can walk through this. But now they're blindfolded. We go back to the original experiment. They're blindfolded, and these boards are just obstructing sounds. They are as accurate at making those judgments as if they were saying. Sandy Berman was absolutely right. People can judge how objects block sounds well enough to know really where they are, which is really very, very impressive. Okay, based on that, we thought, okay, let's see if we can get fancy here. Let's see if they can not just judge the positions of these sound blocking things. Let's see if they can judge the shape. Okay, the shape of foam boards that are blocking sounds. And that's exactly what we did. We had a disc, we had a triangle, we had a square, and they were positioned in front of these loudspeakers. And people came into the room blindfolded. They didn't ever see the shapes. This is the triangle, obviously. They just listened to the sounds that were behind them and moved their heads a little bit around, and then would have to guess whether it was a disc, a square, or the triangle. And as it turns out, people were good. People could do this. People could tell the shape of something that's not making sound, but obstructing, blocking sound. Every subject was better than chance. So chance would be 33% here. And they weren't perfect, but they were, somewhere around 50, 60% of the time they were right, which is really impressive given this is something they've never been asked to do before. And they are judging not something about the sound sources, but instead about how the sound sources are being blocked by specific shapes. In fact, we had some subjects that were outstanding at this. We had about 4 out of our 20 subjects who were 80 to 90% correct. And we're doing it really quickly. We had to do all these controls that we, in between trials when we're shifting, we're changing from a triangle to a disc to a square, whatever. We have to put headphones on them so they can't hear us doing that. They move away just to make sure that there's no way they'll get any cues about what shape we're putting up there. But as soon as we put it up there, we would take their headphones off. The sounds would be coming through those loudspeakers, and a new shape would be there. And they go, square, disc. They would be really quick and really accurate. We thought, this is amazing. What is special about these folks? And we went back and called them up, and we said, you were so good at this, we want to know a little bit about your experience. And all of them had something in common. They had all done sound mixing in some context. So whether it was they recorded their own music, or they were DJs and they spent a lot of time setting up sound equipment and then making sure the sound was balanced between the loudspeakers. A couple of people did sound for their church to make sure everybody in the church could hear the band that was playing on stage or the choirs evenly, so it sounded nice and it sounded about the same in different locations. Having that sort of experience, that sort of expertise, allowed them to do this task better, which is, I think, a really interesting sort of finding. So I think let's end there. We have one more lesson from reflected acoustics, and then next class we will get into sound sources as well. Okay? All right. Actually, there's some questions here. Let me answer these questions very quickly. Do I have enough time? No, I really don't. Let me stop here, and I'll try to answer these questions next class. Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye. See you next time.